Everything we see around us is a shape or a form. Shapes and forms define objects in space. What do we know about them? Shape is a defined area that is flat or two-dimensional. Form is a defined space that has depth or has a third dimension. In visual arts, shape and form are defined by other elements of art. Shape and form can be defined by line. Line and shape almost always work together. They can also be defined by value, by making an area lighter or darker than the surroundings, or by changing a color of the area, or by adding a different texture, or changing a pattern. By defining a background and leaving space for the shape blank, like a cutout. Shape can be also defined by other shapes, by assembling them in a certain way, or by working with positive and negative shapes. There is an endless number of shapes and forms. There are simple shapes and there are complex shapes. Complex shapes and forms are just a combination of other shapes. How do we classify them in all their variety? All shapes and forms fit into two types: geometric and organic. So what do we consider as geometric shapes? Shapes and forms that are precise. They have a specific name, like square, circle, triangle, cone, sphere, for example. They're often man-made, even though we find these shapes in nature as well. Most organic shapes and forms are irregular. They can be found in nature, and most of them do not have a specific name. These shapes and forms are mostly curvy and free-flowing. So, what other types of shapes do we need to know? When we define a shape, we subtract it from its surroundings. Once it is defined, the area around it automatically becomes its background. The defined shape or form is called positive shape. The area around it is called negative. You cannot have one without the other. We can define a shape by creating only one of them. You can create a shape by actually making it, or by creating a background and leaving the area blank. Either way, you can see the same shape. Most optical illusions are based on the concept of positive-negative relationship. It makes you realize that they are equally important. Shapes and forms play important roles in the creation of art. They help to create artwork in its traditional forms: painting, drawing, sculpture, decorative arts, architecture, photography. Because everything we see around us is made of shapes and forms, we use shapes to depict what we see, or what we want to convey, by interpreting, modifying, or just copying the shapes in front of us. Sometimes we have to interpret three-dimensional forms into flat shapes, as in drawings or paintings. Or the other way around, when we create a three-dimensional form from a flat drawing or a sketch, as we do when we create a sculpture or design a building. We use simple shapes to simplify more complex ones as we draw from observation. This is a very important skill that will allow you to become more accurate in your drawings. Simple shapes help us plan and sketch our ideas as a concept, without going into too much details, but keeping the main idea. Abstract or non-objective art is a great example of use of shapes and forms where they play the dominant role just by themselves. Graphic designers use shapes as one of their main tools to symbolize ideas, to create layouts and logos, to design typefaces, or to emphasize important points. Every product you see and use has a form that a designer worked on. Shapes are great for decoration and creation of patterns, for textiles, for example. So we use shapes to depict and create objects, plan an observational drawing, for sketches and layouts, in non-objective and abstract art, in graphic design, in product design and development, as a decoration. And there are obviously many more uses of shapes. I'm sure you can think of a few. Similarly to other art elements, shapes and forms have feelings. Different shapes evoke different emotional responses from the viewer. By using shapes strategically, you can send subliminal messages to your audience. For example, rectangles, blocks, and squares can be interpreted as reliable, orderly, stable, and dependable. Triangles are stable. They can represent power and show direction. Inverted triangles are unstable and create a sense of tension. Circles symbolize completion, wholeness, and harmony. Curves and organic shapes are graceful and elegant. Leaning shapes suggest movement. Don't underestimate the power of shapes and forms in your art, no matter what art form is your favorite.